Welcome to episode number 84 of Hoop Talk Fanatics. I'm here with Paul Fritschner talking Xavier basketball, and I'm excited to hear his thoughts on Xavier and how the season is going. So welcome.
Yeah, how are you, Alex? Good to be with you.
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Let's talk hoops.
My first question is, what are your thoughts on how the season is going?
I would say this Xavier season's definitely been a roller coaster, right? It started off pretty strong, win over Wake Forest in November, but then things kind of hit a rough patch there in December. And for the most part there, it was because they couldn't close out games. And you think about the fact that Xavier was up by 7 in the crosstown shootout against Cincinnati, wasn't able to close that one out, up by 6 against TCU, wasn't able to close that game out. Up against UConn, went to overtime, lost. Up at home against Marquette, lost. Very, very slight up at home against Marquette. It was only a 1-point lead there in the last couple of minutes, but still an opportunity to get a win on your home floor, and lost those games. And now for Xavier, here as we record this on Wednesday, there's a huge chance for the Musketeers here tonight, Alex, to try and win a game against a Creighton team that's given Xavier some troubles in Omaha over the last few years. I mean, Xavier only has one win there since 2018. So it's a tall task for Xavier, kind of literally a tall task going against Ryan Kalkbrenner and the rest of this Creighton team. But yeah, this is a Xavier team that's now won 4 of its last 5 games. They're playing their best basketball at the right time, and now just got to sustain that here into February.
Well, what were your thoughts on how Xavier handled UConn?
Yeah, look, that was a really important game for Xavier, obviously. That was a game that they really needed to win. This 4-game stretch for Xavier where you play at Marquette, you play at St. John's, and you come home against UConn, then you go to Creighton. It's the most difficult 4-game stretch for Xavier in a long time. So to be able to get at least 2 wins in there already, and then potentially 3 if they can win here tonight, was significant. And to be able to beat UConn the way they did. Now, I know UConn was without Liam McNeely, maybe the best player on that team, but Xavier was able to defend at a high level. They were able to make shots when they needed to in the second half. And when I say defend at a high level, specifically at the end of the game, Xavier was able to get 2 stops in the final minute of the game to prevent UConn from getting a win, kind of stealing a win, if we're being honest, because Xavier was up for a majority of the game. It felt like Xavier was in control for most of the game. And then right there at the end, Solo Ball has a 3 to potentially take a 1-point lead. He misses. UConn gets an offensive rebound. Xavier gets a stop again. And look, the way that Xavier won that game with their defense tells a story of what this team could be here going forward.
What is your prediction for Xavier's record next month?
Yeah, I would say that looking at what Xavier needs to do going forward, especially if they win this game tonight, Alex, they have to take care of business. And, Xavier, I would say, is probably going to be the favorite in most of their games down the stretch, if not every game down the stretch after this one. So can Xavier rattle off 9 straight wins after this one? Can they get at least 8 wins in there? Villanova is going to be the most challenging game at Villanova, maybe the Creighton game at Xavier. But, down the stretch of the season, Xavier really needs those 8 wins, and I think they can get them. There's a couple of places where they might be tripped up. At Butler has always given Xavier a tough time. At Providence is a difficult game. But you have Creighton, Butler, Providence at 2 of those 3 at home to finish the season. I do think Xavier can get 8 wins here to finish the season and try to find their way into the NCAA tournament. Again, though, a lot of that rides on whether they can win here tonight against Creighton.
What are your thoughts on the whole conference?
Just as a whole, I think the Big East now, it's fun to see St. John's playing as well as they are. I think St. John's being good is so elite for the Big East. It's great for the Big East to be able to see a team like St. John's kind of get back to where they were at one point a long time ago, and now here under Rick Pitino. Creighton has played their way well into the NCAA tournament conversation. UConn has struggled, but again, they've been without Liam McNeely. So, we'll see when he gets back what they look like as he kind of returns to form there. And then Marquette. I think Marquette's looked shaky over the last few weeks, but they've still been able to find ways to win games. I mean, if you look at Marquette, they still only have one loss in the Big East. They were losing last night to Butler at halftime. They lost to Xavier. They needed overtime to beat DePaul. They've had some shaky performances, but at the end of the day, Marquette is 18-3, and they're 9-1 in the Big East. And their record is spectacular, and it's a reflection of what they are as a team. So can the Big East get to 4 or 5 bids in the NCAA tournament? I think Marquette is a lock. St. John's is a lock. UConn is a lock right now. Can you get Creighton and Xavier into the tournament as the 4th and 5th bids? I think I would feel very good if I was a Creighton fan with where they are right now, as long as they don't completely fall off down the stretch. And then at Xavier, their opportunity is right there in front of them. Can they beat Creighton and then rattle off games in February and then early March to get themselves into the dance?
Do you think Villanova can be in the same bubble as Xavier and Creighton?
I don't think Villanova – I just don't see them having the firepower here down the stretch to play their way in the NCAA tournament. I mean, look, on January 9th, the day after that UConn game, Villanova had just beat UConn the night before. Mm-hmm. Villanova was 11-5. They were 4-1 in the Big East. And you're thinking to yourself, all right, they've only lost one game since November, and that was a close one at Creighton. Looks like Villanova's turned a corner and they have things figured out. Well, now all of a sudden they've lost 4 of their last 5 games. One of those losses in there was to Georgetown, who's completely fallen off the map here in the last couple of weeks. Can Villanova turn this around? I mean, they do have games against Creighton, against St. John's, against UConn, Marquette. I just don't know if Villanova really has the firepower right now to be able to beat those teams and play their way back in the NCAA tournament conversation. Which they were in a couple of weeks ago, but they're not really in anymore.
I'm actually a big Villanova fan as for myself, and I just think that it's going to be hard for them to get going, especially who they have in the upcoming month. And I think they play Xavier early February, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Super Bowl Sunday, February 9th.
Yeah, Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah. I just feel like the amount of talent that's on top of the standings is really hard for them to bounce back from all the losses that they have, and I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot for Villanova to play their way back into the tournament conversation. But it's not impossible. They do have the wins there. I just don't see the way they're playing right now doesn't give me a ton of confidence that they can get back there.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the matchup tonight?
Yeah, look, Xavier's going to have to be able to defend the 3. Creighton, almost 50% of their shots are from beyond the arc, which is one of the highest rates in the country. They shoot a ton of threes. They make a lot of threes. And also you have to deal with Ryan Kalkbrenner. Look, he's the 3-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year. He has blocked 56 shots himself this season. Xavier as a team has blocked 62. So he has 6 less just himself than Xavier does as a team. And Xavier has the 10th highest blocked shot percentage in the country, which means there's only 10 teams in the country who get their shots blocked at a higher percentage than Xavier. They have a lot of trouble when they get into the paint trying to navigate around some of those more effective and taller post players that can block shots. If Xavier is able to limit what they do around Ryan Kalkbrenner, and as well as one of Xavier's biggest strengths is being able to play aggressive and get to the foul line. Well, Creighton is the best team in the country at defending without fouling. So all of these things, I think these are two teams that are very different stylistically from what they want to do against each other. Both teams shoot threes. Both teams like to get up and down the court, but just how these teams play within their own systems, I think it's a very intriguing matchup. One of the more intriguing ones I think that Xavier plays throughout the Big East season. And again, it's a game that Xavier, I don't want to say it's a must win, but if you don't win this, you basically have to go 9-0 down the stretch. If you do win this, you give yourself some leeway for losing, at Villanova or maybe tripping up at Butler later in the season. Not a lot of leeway, but at least some. And this one here tonight is just, it's absolutely massive for both teams, but more so on Xavier's end.
Mm-hmm. The rest of the season should be interesting, and thanks for coming on and talking to Xavier basketball, and I'll definitely have you back on sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thanks.